Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics on this Wednesday, June the 11th. Still pretty quiet out over the Atlantic Basin and somewhat busy still over the Pacific side. We'll look at the different models and the satellite images and also go over some of those models going back to the other models and making those comparisons. Kind of like what we did yesterday, because the GFS, as many of you know, has been trying to develop something in the tropics basically since hurricane season started. But I'm going to show you the comparisons between model run and model run, very similar to what I did yesterday, but actually finding a little bit of a trend in one area of the Atlantic Basin that might end up being a hot spot. Right now, the GFS is the only one that's really kind of picking up on it. The other models are not, but I just wanted to show you at least some consistency that we tend to look for as meteorologists when we do put together a tropical forecast. First, we're going to look at our current temperatures here in Lafayette. We have a mix of sun and clouds. It's warm. It's getting a lot more humid too. 84 degrees with a heat index of 92 as those dew points have risen back to 75. It actually felt pretty comfortable this morning compared to yesterday morning, but it is starting to get a bit more muggy out there as some moisture starts to return and another disturbance comes in from the west. But looking at our cameras here, it's not a bad travel day here in the Acadiana region. Again, a lot of sunshine there from Louisiana Avenue over toward Henderson and Breaux Bridge. And then along Ambassador Caffrey at I-10 looks okay there too. And even up in Opelousas and Alexandria, we're getting some decent amounts of sunshine there. But check out the radar as we are now starting to see some showers and thunderstorms developing here across extreme southwestern portions of Louisiana. And then we've also got some showers and thunderstorms that are firing up here over parts of southeastern Louisiana, right around the Morgan City area. And in fact, I'm going to pull up the Hammond radar there, and you can see they're very close to Morgan City. You've got some rain there. But if you're heading east on Highway 90 over into portions of Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes, you're going to run into some problems there. And then looking out here to the west, grab the Lake Charles radar once again. It looks like we've got some hefty storms there south of Lake Arthur. Those are kind of pushing off toward the northeast and some new thunderstorms developing over western Vermilion Parish. And then things kind of spotty here back over Calcasieu and into Beauregard parishes with a pretty good line of thunderstorms now coming out of Texas. I'll go ahead and put this into motion so you can see what's happening here. And we are going to see the moisture continuing to lift, and the daytime heating will spark off those afternoon showers and thunderstorms locally. But if that line of thunderstorms back to the west holds on, or at least some of that energy pushes into Acadiana, I do think we're going to see a little bit more in the way of shower and thunderstorm activity continuing into the late afternoon and early evening hours. That's all part of an upper level low that's over western Texas that's going to kind of drift a little farther to the north. So we are going to have unsettled weather today and tomorrow, and then Friday and going into the weekend, there will still be a little leftover trough kind of in the wake of that low. So rain chances will be down a bit, but I can't get rid of all of the rain chances for your Father's Day weekend. As far as the offshore waters, if folks want to do some boating, there will be scattered showers and thunderstorms out there. And of course, winds and seas are higher around those storms. But as a general rule, a southerly breeze at about 10 to 15 knots and seas running about 2 to 3 feet. So getting into the tropics, at this point, the National Hurricane Center doesn't think we're going to see any tropical activity here over the next 7 days, but at least one model is trying to get a little more active going into days 8, 9, and 10. And we've also got an update on the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook, which takes us into week 2 and week 3, and we'll check that out here in a little bit later in the show. So let's real quick take a look at the Gulf satellite. Again, we've got fair skies over much of the Gulf waters. We've got some showers and thunderstorms there around Pensacola, kind of drifting off toward the east, toward Apalachicola, and a few showers off the southern Florida coast. But the big action is over toward the west, where we've got showers and thunderstorms that are coming out of Texas here, and that's going to continue to kind of push off toward the east. And we are going to get a taste of that as it moves in a little bit later this afternoon and into the early evening hours. Yesterday, we talked more of an upper trough that was over the western part of the Caribbean, and you can see that we've got those those trade winds at the surface that are continuing to push off toward the west, while the upper levels, everything is moving off to the east. So that's kind of offsetting winds. That's wind shear. And you end up with some problems there when it comes to any tropical weather trying to develop. And for some reason, it looks like my Central America satellite has gone missing here. So I'll have to fix that in a little bit. But looking at the entire tropical Atlantic satellite, at least I can give you a glimpse of what's going on there in the western portion of the Caribbean, right around Central America. We still have that little bit of a trough that is moving off toward the west, and more of the rains are now spreading into Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And I really think a lot of this that you're seeing here is going to work its way westward into the Pacific Ocean and might have a better chance for some development there. Other than that, we've just got a handful of tropical waves. You got one off the African coast, one that's about 3/4 of the way across the Atlantic, and then one right here that's kind of actually a little bit farther to the east, moving there westward across the Caribbean Sea. So at this point, we don't have anything that looks interesting except on the Pacific side. We still have Cosme that's left over, and it's dissipating, and it's out here now starting to move into the colder waters, but actually right there as the daylight comes in on that satellite. And then what's left of Barbara is kind of X'd out here over southern Mexico. This area here is probably going to stay pretty active. In fact, the National Hurricane Center's extended forecast for the Pacific Ocean shows Cosme going non-tropical, and still the possibility of some new action there south of Mexico as well as south of Central America. So the global tropics hazard outlook, this is a new update. It came yesterday afternoon. So this is the first we're seeing it here on Let's Talk Tropics. And you can see that there in week 2, starting June 18th, going through the 24th. So what's that? A week from today, there's still a bit of a hot spot there in the Bay of Campeche, which is really interesting because when we start to look at some of the GFS solutions over the last several days, you're going to see a little bit of a trend there in the Bay of Campeche and the western part of the Gulf. So before we get to the models, those water temperatures are plenty warm for tropical activity. Anything that's yellow or brighter on here, or about 26.5 degrees Celsius or higher, that's where your 80-degree threshold is. So all of the Caribbean, the Gulf, and the Western Atlantic, and really the central and eastern part of the Atlantic is already starting to achieve temperatures that are warm enough to support tropical activity. And even though there are some cooler than average areas over the Atlantic and the Caribbean, a lot of those regions already have the 80-degree water at the surface, but maybe not necessarily very deep do those 80-degree waters go. Your hot spot is there over the western part of the Caribbean, where you've got high tropical cyclone heat potential here off the Yucatan Peninsula, south of Cuba, and over toward Jamaica. And remember, this area right in here is one of the regions where you have a lot of tropical activity develop during the month of June. So at the same time, at least the GFS model is trying to build a trough here over the western part of the Caribbean and then maybe take it off toward the west-northwest over toward the Rio Grande Valley coming up in about 10 days. And we'll get to those models in just a little bit. Shear is a big problem over the Caribbean, but the western part of the Gulf and the eastern part of the Gulf is starting to see a little bit more limited wind shear. At this point, there's no tropical weather anywhere close to those regions. So if there were, we'd be a little more interested in it, considering the wind shear is fairly low. And the Saharan dust has kind of fizzled out over parts of the Gulf, rather, at least the central part of the Gulf, but down toward the Yucatan, a bit of dust there. The Caribbean still has Saharan dust, but it is kind of washing out a little bit too. But the Atlantic is pretty much covered, and another plume is coming off the African continent and will make its way off toward the west. So the GFS hot off the presses in the next 10 days. Remember, the GFS goes out 16. So I've got the links to all of these graphics down below. So if you want to do some homework and check out some of the models and go farther out than 10 days, you're more than welcome to do so. But as it rolls here, that's the start. And you can see the moisture building again over Central America, and even a low pressure area moving over Honduras, the Yucatan, and then reemerging over the Bay of Campeche, possibly bringing a tropical storm toward deep South Texas. Now, yesterday, we talked about all the different models for the past several days. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way back to Friday afternoon. If you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see initialized 18Z June 6th. So that is Friday afternoon. And at that time, the GFS was showing a tropical system coming toward the New Orleans area. But as you go in the succeeding runs, you can see the next one put something off Texas. This is going into Saturday morning's model runs for late next week, and then it disappears for a little while, and then you get a little bit of a trough there on the west coast of the Yucatan, rather west coast of the Bay of Campeche. So real quick, let me pull up something else here just to kind of give you a little bit better idea of the region that I'm looking at here. So I want you to focus on that area right in there is where we're going to be looking at a little bit more in the way of consistency from model run to model run. So now we're here at Saturday afternoon's model run for next Friday, and then you see there's another low that's over Texas, and then the succeeding one puts one way up into the panhandle of Texas. Then it drops back down to the Bay of Campeche. This is looks like Sunday morning's model, and then Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, but you're still looking at that moisture buildup on the west coast of the Gulf near the Bay of Campeche, although a little bit more negligible on if you're going to see a trough building there. But as you start to get into the latter runs starting yesterday, you see down there on the western part of the Bay of Campeche, maybe a bit of a trough trying to develop or even a low pressure area. So the trend going all the way up until the brand new model, which is that one right there, has been showing a little consistency on the west coast of the Gulf, possibly some development going into the latter part of next week, but nothing to worry about for this week and going through the middle part of next week. The Euro model doesn't really agree a whole lot with the GFS. It's not showing anything for the next 10 days. And even beyond that, the Euro model, every other run goes out 15 days. And I really didn't see a whole lot of action trying to develop other than a bit of extra moisture there around Central America. But as the rest of the global models have been showing, a lot of that is going to continue westward into the Pacific where things are a little more active. Canadian model also keeps the Pacific side a lot more active, although there are a couple of frames there where there's a little trough there along the west coast of the Bay of Campeche, which would be somewhat similar to the GFS, but it's still pretty far off from what the GFS is forecasting. And the icon going out only 7 days, unfortunately. We don't get that full length look there, but there is some moisture building over Central America, hinting at least some kind of a trough trying to build there. What happens after day 7 there on the west coast of the Yucatan and the Bay of Campeche is still kind of out up in the air. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see there. But at least for the next week, I think we're good. But maybe for the middle part of next week, if what we're seeing on the GFS starts to rear its ugly head, it's probably going to be over the western part of the Caribbean and then kind of lift its way off toward the west-northwest. Also, wanted to show you that Colorado State did an update on their earlier preseason forecast, and they're running about the same this time. Numbers are unchanged. 17 named storms are predicted, 4 hurricanes, or rather 9 hurricanes, and 4 of those becoming major hurricanes. So an above average season, about 1 over on the major hurricanes, 2 over on actual hurricanes, and about 3 more than the average on the named storms, which does follow in the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season outlook from NOAA. They're predicting 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 5 of those being major hurricanes. So the 2 big preseason forecasts, early season forecasts, are pretty much neck and neck here when it comes to what they're expecting here for the 2025 hurricane season, which also is a good reason to go ahead and get prepared with what you can grab right now. So this is not your last minute prep, or this is not your week out prep. This is stuff that you can do now when there's no tropical weather. Gather any of the supplies that you see here on your list, or perhaps you have some of these supplies still left over from last year's hurricane season, or maybe from the winter storm if you did some preparations for that stuff too. But take a look at that list there and try to grab as many of those things that you can within the next couple of weeks. And then at least you'll have a good head start on what you need for hurricane season 2025. Well, that's what I've got for you on this Wednesday. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. That way you know when Let's Talk Tropics airs live, and when Acadiana Weather Today airs on weekday mornings at 7. You can also hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. Please follow my social media pages on Facebook and X, and thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. Look out for those scattered showers and thunderstorms for the rest of the afternoon. I'll have updates on social media. And until Thursday, I'm Dave Baker. I'll see you then.